Hi, Huntresses.
Welcome to Talk Rich to Me.
Where we explore the human side of finance. We're your co-hosts, Stephanie Gutman
And Yesenia Rhodes, co-founders of Huntress Wealth. Welcome back, Huntresses. It's Yesenia. Today on Talk Rich to Me, Stephanie is joined by Jen Slaski, former tech marketing leader turned therapist and brand consultant. Jen provides us with insights on how understanding your personal currency beyond the money can help you get unstuck. Fun little tidbit. Jen is also working with Huntress as a mindset provider, supporting our community in building financial confidence. Enjoy.
I'm here today with Jen Slaski on Talk Rich to Me. I had the privilege of working with Jen several years back, and I got to see a tiny little window of her career. But now she is a therapist, and I'm excited to walk through her history and her journey. And we're going to talk money stories today and share her knowledge with the world, and especially on how she works with people and getting unstuck. So, Jen, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So we're here a little bit to talk about your story, but also you're, officially in the professional category when it comes to the wisdom economy. And so it's not the wisdom economy. When it comes to the wisdom, what do you call it? Profession?
I don't know. I think I said something like the wisdom industry because that's just my reassurance that the older I get, the more wisdom I'll have. Whereas with AI and all the tech, systems, you feel like if you're going in one direction, you're not going to keep up that way. So I don't know where that phrase really came from, but the wisdom industry,
The wisdom industry.
the wisdom industry.
Oh, amazing. And so I thought we'd start, maybe it's a little cliche, but like go all the way back to some of your experiences when you were a child with money, but also just more broadly, how it's helped shaped what success looks like for you.
I think if somebody asks me the first memories of money related to myself I have, it involves how exciting it felt for me to earn money. It was just really empowering when I would have. So I was one of those kiddos that thought it was super cool when other kids got allowance just for being alive. Because I would come home and my dad was like, "Oh, allowance for you. You are welcome to get an allowance if you would like to do chores." And I was like, "But there's kids at school that their parents just give them money." He's like, "Oh, it's too bad you don't live with them." But like, so, and I'll say like background, like my dad grew up very blue collar from Pittsburgh. His father was in the steel mills. And so my dad definitely had that working
Mm-hmm.
class ethic. And he was very much a self-made man himself. And so all that to say, when I became interested in earning money, mainly because there were clothing items I wanted to get that my parents wouldn't buy me because they thought that they were ridiculous or outlandish or exorbitant or whatnot. And so my dad made me a list when I was like, well, how do I get these things that I want then if I'm not getting an allowance? And he's like, you earn them. And so I always loved that. So there was this list and it would range. I could earn nominal money for grades, but like that was never the thing. Like that's never why I got the grades that I got. But for chores, I would get really motivated. And I had an older brother. So there was a little bit of competition there. And I can remember the most invigorating thing for me would be on a Saturday morning when my brother started sleeping in later. And then I would get up early. And my dad was very much like the early bird gets the worm. So I would get up super early so that I could beat my brother to the punch and mow the lawn because that was the item where I could make the most money. So it was mowing lawns or the lawn. It was washing cars. It was whatever my dad would come up with his projects then. And I just loved it. It was really energizing to me to do that and to have that sense of empowerment around, okay, here's how I get money for the things I want.
I love, like, hold up, that y'all didn't have like assigned chores. It was like whoever got to it first. And like,
Yeah.
so you were trying to beat your brother out to, to get
Yeah.
some. the
Oh,
chores.
yeah.
That's so fun.
And then my brother really tried to campaign around the quality of the work because he was very meticulous about his lines in the lawn, and I was maybe a little bit less so. And so, but that didn't work. I think my dad was really, yes, he wanted to promote like quality work, but he was more like trying to, I think, instill this sense of having a little bit of, that motivation and sort of the, hop to it mentality.
Yeah, it's super funny thinking of I was very much so in a if you want it, you earn it
Mhm.
situation. And maybe I had friends who just got allowance, but it was very much so. I remember the friend who had the if you do this chore, you get the money for the chore. So like pulling weeds. And so we would spend
Mhm.
and we would get paid 10 cents a weed. And so we would just like and we made like
Oh.
20 bucks. It's a lot of weeds that
Yeah,
we
that is
pulled.
a lot of weeds. It's really funny
Uh,
you bring that up because the weeding was my nemesis. It was my least favorite chore. And that was
yeah.
part of the reason there would be a menu of options, and I think that's actually part of why I would get up early because 'cause I'm like, "I just don't want the weeding," and so I would actually, at a certain point, happily not weed and leave that money on the table. Like, I kind of figured out, like, opportunity costs at a certain point, and I'm like, yeah, no, not this weekend, no weeding."
How did you start to think about, achievement?
I was always really clear for me on this notion of I wanted to be energized by my work. And I think that maybe that even as I look back, I didn't realize this, but that showed up for me even early on with my chores. Like there
Yeah.
were the ones that I wanted to enjoy doing them and that felt in some way more rewarding. And when I got clear on the ones that weren't, I was willing to leave that money on the table. Like I
Yeah.
was willing to have this, I guess I had this sense of currency even at that young of an age. And I wasn't lazy,
Yeah.
but I just got to the point where I figured out what was enough money for what I wanted. I never felt like, "Oh, I need to do absolutely every single chore to get the maximum amount of money," um, period, like, unless maybe there was a goal that I was saving towards. What I
Mhm.
can tell you is, there was a time and it was in, my early corporate world, life was very stressful, and I just kept trying to figure out, like, what is it that I want to do as I continue going on in my career because it wasn't feeling all that rewarding. It was very monetarily rewarding, yet it
Mhm.
wasn't, I know, like existentially in my soul rewarding. And I could see the golden handcuff writing on the wall that if it keeps going and I buy a house and this and that. So anyway, um, I started at that point really being thoughtful about where I was spending my other time to feed my soul. And so I started volunteering and I taught Sunday school. And during one of the weekends that the kiddos were off, this nun came in to do this Myers-Briggs exercise with us, which
Mhm.
I totally nerded out about because I love all of those. And the one thing I remember during that is she said, in life, in general, there are people who want to be remembered for what they've done versus remembered for who they were. And
Mhm.
immediately I knew my answer. I knew that my answer was I want to be remembered for who I've been and how I've touched people's lives or impacted them. And it's really important for me knowing that to make sure that whatever career I'm in or whatever environment I'm in, there's enough other people that care enough about who it is they are and who it is they will have been as opposed to just what they've accomplished or achieved that they put on their resume or LinkedIn profile. And not to say that it has to be completely one or the other, it's definitely a spectrum,
Yeah.
but I just got really clear in terms of like where I'm at on that spectrum and as I make choices in my life, how I want them to be aligned with that end of things to be true to myself.
Yeah. I I mean, very much so you've accomplished that. I can't even like actually picture a thing that we worked on together, but I remember the feeling of like being in a room with you.
I love
Um,
that. Thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. That means a lot to me, Stephanie.
To be clear, I was also only there 3 months. So
You were?
you're
I
probably
feel like we were together so much longer. I feel far more connected to you than just 3
yeah.
months worth of time. So that speaks
It's
volumes about you and who you are as a person as well. And
I know the list of accomplishments is long, so my little window is just a little snapshot, but it was very much so a who you are, not what you do environment. So,
well, and the
uh,
interesting thing is what I would say is one of my greatest accomplishments from that time. While the accolades that credit people will give me is really flattering and generous and whatnot. If somebody says, "What's your greatest accomplishment?" I always say the fact that I still have meaningful relationships that transcended that time and space because they meant something and they continue on beyond that. So it wasn't just transactional, let's get work done. So it means a lot to me that you even invited me here to be part of this and to want to spend time picking my brain.
also when I got to work with Jen, she was a tech company, and you were a fairly early employee, and you had a lot of influence, certainly in building the organization, but in building what you did and what your impact on the organization was. Like, you designed a lot of your own path there, it felt like,
Mhm.
or at least that was my perception, in seeing that you got to draw your own lines, right, for you and for your organization. And so you made tech work for you, right? It was back to your your dad gave you the menu of chores and you did the ones that you wanted to do, right? And had the highest impact.
Well, and I appreciate that reflection, Stephanie. Like it's interesting to hear it reflected back. And what comes up for me is I need to give credit to the Spiceworks co-founders for
Hmm.
making that possible.
Yeah.
And they were the ones between Scott Abel, Jay Hallberg, Greg Cadwar, Francis Sullivan early on. That was a set of values they had to
Yeah.
really help people tune into what are you awesome at? Go be the best to that. And I can remember
Hmm.
this moment where I'd been spending a week struggling with like projecting out the user growth in a spreadsheet. And I'm like, what is a pivot table? I have no idea. And I kept struggling and trying and putting off handing the spreadsheet in or sending it over, and Jay kept checking in. And then finally at Friday, he's like, okay, whatever you have at 2 p.m. today, we're going to call it a game and that's good.
Yeah.
And then I finally gave it to him and he kind of chuckled in a kind way because I'm sure my spreadsheet like was just terrible or, it was probably so Mickey Mouse or pretty basic. And he said to me like, so you've been wrestling with this all week. And I was like, I have. And he said, so if you want to get really good at spreadsheets, I can help make that happen. And I want you to know you don't have to. You just need to know enough to be dangerous. And there's people here that love them that are really good at them that will help you. And he's like, and by the way, Azim has been struggling with some copy he's been writing all week. And his copy's just about as good as your spreadsheet. So I would much prefer for you guys to just swap and help each other and just
Totally.
get to be you. And so I tell that story. But in all seriousness, it was a gift early on in a startup when there was so much to be done that as we grew, they very much helped us tune into here's what our natural talents were and to really lean into that and bring those to life. And so for me, it's always been about human connection, relationships, creativity, and creating this sense of connection amongst
Hmm.
any number of things, like connection that one has with themselves and what they value and what they're good
Yeah.
at, connection with colleagues and coworkers so that you feel connected with the people you're spending most of your time with, connected to the mission and vision and values of a company, connected to the customer.
Yeah.
So that they really gave me leeway to embrace that and bring that to fruition in a way that even I couldn't have imagined. So I'm really
Yeah.
grateful for
Having left Spiceworks, you did go into consulting,
Mhm,
working for yourself, which is a whole other change of pace, right?
mhm,
Even if some of the work is similar.
mhm.
What inspired you to go become a licensed therapist?
Sure. I am somebody that, as I've mentioned before, is always very heart led. And I just so happened to stumble across this class after I'd gone on my own, and the title was Spirituality in the Workplace. And I
Mm.
just really, really compelled by that because to me, like spirituality doesn't necessarily have a denomination or a particular faith tradition around it. It's just that sense of how we feel something greater than ourselves and how we make meaning out of our lives. And so the school where I happened to take this class that I just loved, it turned out that they had a counseling program there. And
Mhm.
I feel like philosophically, what this school was about, that they were talking about these concepts, just felt really natural to me. And I just figured as I thought forward in my life, look, like this is something that's always been here. I'm a huge nerd and I love to learn. So, what
Yeah.
if I just go ahead and pursue this learning degree and I see counseling, anything having to do with human beings, as a wisdom industry. And so I knew it would be something that I would, number one, nerdily just really find interesting to learn about. Number two, I knew that with my consulting work with leaders and corporate cultures and brands, that I was going to learn things that were going to enrich that work and make me even more helpful in that capacity. And
Yeah.
I felt like for so many people, we spend the majority of our lives at work, and it seems like such a missed opportunity to not at least try to explore that and what might be possible there.
Your consulting work is with brands, brand development, sometimes coaching within that, so internal or external. But you're working with people in various capacities, whether it's officially as therapist or as coach. But I know you've mentioned a lot of your clients are going through this period of feeling stuck
Mhm.
and then getting unstuck. How do you help people get unstuck? What are some of the first exercises or ideas or conversations that you have with people to help on that journey?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is they're able to articulate that they feel stuck.
Mhm.
I mean, and I know that sounds pretty basic, but sometimes people don't even realize it because they're just going through the motions. And there's something off, or they have this malaise or this restlessness or discontent, and they might not even realize it. So I think the first step is some clarity around where they feel stuck and also their theory perhaps on why. And it usually comes down to fear. I mean, it usually comes down to some fear of change because they're not sure what to do next, or
Mhm.
change because they're afraid they'll fail, or change because if they do have some idea of what to do next, they're worried that it's the wrong answer. From a professional standpoint, money does come up a lot, the paralysis around, well, but if I do this, what will happen financially? And
Yeah.
so, first, I feel like there is this notion, kind of in the therapy biz, if you will, there's this phrase we use that says, name it to tame it. And it's really being able to first get clarity on how you feel stuck and generally some hypothesis around why. And then I work with people to go through a values exercise where I help them excavate what really matters most to them and why. So, around the top five values. And it's not something I don't ask people, name your top five values, because the result you get from that is very different than if you give someone a whole bushel full of values and say, pick which ones resonate most with you. So, I go through an exercise with them on that. And then we reflect on those five values and in their current life, how aligned they feel. And I ask them to rank it between one and five. And then where they find they're misaligned, we get curious and we lean in there and we just start working in little ways to discover how they can take baby steps to feel more aligned. And actually, sometimes in doing that with even just some movement and some motion, they can feel a bit alleviated from the like paralysis, the total stuckness. It frees things up a bit more. that sometimes they can take the pressure off other areas. So for instance, if somebody's like, I think I'm miserable in my job, I'm going to be stuck unless I completely, change my path. Well, I don't really rip the band-aid off like that. Like I know enough in working with people to see like if you can get them even making some degrees worth of changes, maybe in other areas of their life, it helps them at least get moving in a hopeful direction. And I also think that with the values exercise, I'll say, um, part of that is me helping people really understand what their currency is. This notion of currency,
Yeah.
people feel like, well, I have to take the job where I'm going to make the absolute most money. And I think for most people, as you get older and you realize how there is currency in time, there is currency in feeling energized and inspired by your work. There is currency in working for people that you trust and respect. There is currency in feeling like you work for a culture that does see the holistic human and cares about things like achievement alongside mental well-being. So there's all these,
Mhm.
there's currency in being able to manage your schedule in a way that you can go to your kiddos' sporting event at 4
Mhm.
p.m. afternoon and figure out how you get the rest of the work done in a way that works for you. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of it, especially as it relates to stuckness professionally for people.
I was at a meeting with someone this morning who one of their core values is generosity.
Mm,
And it was really cool to hear how she talked about it as a currency. Like she has this very high paying job that maybe the job itself doesn't feel generous. But what she's able to do with that paycheck helps her feel very, very generous. But
mhm,
she's looking at, well, what happens if I take some of that feeling that way and go work in a more generous capacity, right?
mhm,
But it's less paycheck. And
mhm.
those two things being kind of equal for her time and her money adding up
Yeah,
to like generosity. So
yeah,
it's like hearing things in the notion of currency. I was like, it's when you know what you want and what's of value to you, right? It's a lot easier
mhm,
to make those kinds of trade-offs
mhm,
towards it.
mhm. Well, and I'm blown away, Stephanie, I am blown away time and again by how surprised people are when they go through their values exercise, like what they are at this season in their life. Because
Yeah.
throughout seasons of life, things change in terms of even what we need to prioritize. Like when you have a
Mhm.
parent that's sick that you're needing to care for, or if you're in that sandwich generation situation with kiddos and aging parents, or if you have a special needs child, or if you're going through a really challenging time in your marriage, or if you get diagnosed with something, there's all
Yeah.
these things that really can change in that moment what we value the most. And if we don't have some intentional time and space to reflect on that, it is really easy in the modern era to get caught up in life living us. And so I it's always really rewarding to help people have that time and space and reconnect with those values and get some more clarity on right now what currency is and what trade-offs they're willing to at least consider making.
Mhm.
Money is always a scary one for people. Like they'll kind of say like, "Well, how could I not again make the most?" But like that woman you said, um I think that even asking the question and reflecting is the first space of it. And I do think really practical knowledge of your financial situation matters. And that might sound obvious to your listeners because they're already oriented this way. But I work with a lot of really successful professionals that if you ask them, how much do you need to make? They have no
Mhm.
idea. They're like, oh, just like, well, of course, like more is better just in
Yeah.
case. And what you find is it's super powerful for people when they can sit down with those numbers and
Yeah.
somebody, whoever it is, to get real clarity over like what your run rate is, what your true expenses in any given month and year are, what your budget is, and then what you need versus maybe what you like want. And of course, there's different thresholds for, you know, risk and wanting to long term plan, but like people's values, that it matters in terms of that. And I have found that that gives people a lot of peace and space in this discernment process forward to getting unstuck towards a way of being that's more values aligned and feels more expansive, and like they have this sense of flourishing.
So, yeah, I think it's very much so there's a functional part of money. Like there are things that we need. We need to take care of ourselves and living in this outside of basic stress, right? Like your hierarchy of needs, right? There's a functional part of money, but then there's the values part, like what matters to you, what's important to you, and it's when you are past that functional space, like using that intentionally
Mm-hmm.
is it's just so rewarding, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I
Uh,
think even in that, Stephanie, in like something that can get in the way of that rewarding, because money is emotional.
yeah,
And again, wherever we come from, like what our past with money, like what we saw our parents and our family histories, like there are deep emotional dynamics there that sometimes we don't know about. And so
yeah,
I do feel like it can be important to tune into those as well, because sometimes you need other people to help you move forward. Like I have one client, she's so successful. She has her own business, like marketing agency. She has more clients than she knows how. She's working so hard and she wants to work less. And every time we talk about her finances, she's crushing it. She's fine, but
yeah,
she comes from poverty and she comes from a place where her parents lost everything and she didn't. And so that is in her. And she's anytime there's a client, I can't, I just, even though my brain says I want more time with my girls, I want more time for self-care, I just knee jerk say yes because I have that kind of scarcity mentality. And so she's working and I've worked with her to say, okay, like who are the people in your world? Like who is your accountant even at the business? Like helping
mhm,
her set goals that she knows that's enough, and have told her, your accounting people, tell them this is your challenge. And as soon as you do that, have them remind you, no, we're good. Like she needs that scaffolding in to help her
yeah,
use her currency in a way that is rewarding, as opposed to be completely stymied by these very real, emotional dynamics that come from her. But the fact of the matter is at the end of the day, even if you're not good at math, you can quantify the fact that we spend most of our lives at work. And so if you have a shot to be doing something that you enjoy, that's a no-brainer. But even if you're not sure what it is, there's this stat I came across recently in this. I was doing the Strength Finder workshop for this company, and
yeah,
every time I do it, I always tweak the presentation a little bit differently than the last group. I've been doing this for like 15 years, but I think part of it's the learner in me. Like I want to find and learn something new. And there was this stat that said if for 20% of your work day, or no, sorry, I take it back. For 20% of your day, if you're able to be using your natural gifts, like your strengths, that
yeah,
your level of life satisfaction and happiness is 3 times, 3x that of just doing whatever. And
yeah.
that, that was just really compelling to me. That stat, like that's pretty big. And I also feel like it gave grace for 20% isn't that much of a day.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's attainable.
Yes,
Like,
I did too. That's why I'm so excited
yeah,
about this stat. And I will say, I also feel like even though I get greedy for people and I really want people to feel inspired and motivated in their line of work, because no matter what, we do spend most of our day there. So if I can help somebody discern how to get more of that, then I'm all about it. And at the same time, there's plenty of people that practically have certain financial responsibilities and obligations for whatever reason and season of life, such that they just need to be earning as much as they can for whatever reason at that point. And I'm now excited to say, cool, can we just get 20% of your day that might not be related to your work day? Maybe it is, maybe we can squeak that out in there. But if not, let's find other areas of your life where we can infuse some elements of passion, recreation,
Yeah,
childhood.
very much so. All right. So to wrap out the conversation, we always end with our final two questions. First, what is one piece of advice you'd like to give the huntresses out there?
We've already talked so much about values, and I do think that's really important. Um, to take the time in this space to sit with somebody else and reflect on what matters most to you right now and have an authentic conversation and reflection on where you're at with that. And somebody you trust, it doesn't have to be, it can be anybody. It can be a friend, it can be a family member, it could be a therapist, it could be a colleague, it could be, any number of people. But I do think taking that time and space is invaluable because life moves fast. And if we aren't intentional about scheduling those times for intentional reflection, time can pass really, really quickly. And we feel like we've lost time. And I also think on that note, the importance of really taking stock that you have people in your life that you can be your whole authentic, imperfect, messy, uncertain self with to just
Yeah.
be able to get any of these, you know, fears that you have out of your head and the whole name it to tame it. Um, because that's where I think that we really move forward and make progress when we have somebody else, at least in our life, that we can be wholly authentic and real with to help us move past those stuck places or stuck times or just hard times.
Yeah. All right. And finally, Jen, what does rich mean to you?
So rich, to be honest, to me means like French food. Like I love just very like luxurious and like, oh, this just feels like lovely and wonderful. And that is what comes up for me when I hear rich. And I think that for me, I go to a place after that luxuriating that for me brings up notions of what I call like abundance. Like I really just want to feel abundant in my life in the sense of flourishing and abundance. And to me, part of that is money and part of it is mainly having financial peace of mind, whatever that means, so that I can enjoy other areas of my life and that I am making sure that I'm feeling fulfilled by a big picture, like a collage of things.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's part of the like feeling abundant is knowing that I'm able to honor all of those areas as best I can.
I love the phrase that popped in my head when you said French food. I'm like, a full fat life. Like, or on real butter, you know?
Right? Yes, exactly. Real butter, you're right, and cream and chocolate and croissant.
Mhm. The the fresh warm baguette. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
right, right. But there is actually really to that, I will say, if you think about that, there's this notion of really indulging in life and living a
Mhm.
full, rich life that I
Full
think
flavor.
yeah, we see, and everybody might have a different, culture that they look to that embodies
Mhm.
that, but there is something about, like, the beauty of living that way.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the conversation, Jen. This was so much fun.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. This was fun.
um, and then can you say bye, huntresses, for me?
Bye, huntresses.
Beautiful.
You've been listening to Talk Rich to Me, a production from Huntress Wealth. For more chill takes on finance, sign up for our newsletter at huntresswealth.com. That's HUNTRESSWEALTH.com.